Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
And welcome into Purple Access. It's Judd. It is Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune, columnist, of course, and Ross Brendel producing, as always. Much appreciated on that. And Chipper, the season might be done, but there is still plenty to get to, including what I consider to be one of the most fun parts, which is the speculation and the building process that begins now. And a lot to talk about, but I want to start here. So Brian Flores is not going to get a job. He talked to Jacksonville. He talked to Chicago. He talked to the Jets. All of those teams have filled job. The only job that's left is the Saints job now, and that looks like it's probably going to go to Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore after the Super Bowl. So what in your mind does this mean as far as, because if you're the Vikings, it's good news, but what does this mean in terms of the defense? And I guess to start with a guy that you did a great piece on during the season, Harrison Smith, who's on the borderline of retiring and was a year ago as well, but loves Flores. And I got to think that this helps the cause to bring him back potentially.
Yeah. Obviously, probably disappointing for Flores that he didn't get another shot at being head coach yet. But I think, obviously, for the Vikings, selfishly, they have to be thrilled because now you get, year two of him really being able to pick the personnel that he wants. And so I think we saw what that looked like this year. And so, does it help, with bringing Harrison Smith back? I would say it doesn't hurt. I don't, that's up to Harrison, whether his body feels like it and if he wants to go through it. But I can tell you in talking to him, number of times about it, how much he loves playing for Flores and the way he's used and the creativity and kind of not autonomy, but leeway that Flores gives his players to do things on the field without having to be robots. And so I think Harrison's had a blast this year. Obviously winning helps, but I think just the way he's used and the way the defense plays, I think, really endears to him, but it's just whether he wants to go through the whole process of getting your body beat up to hell and back. So, but I think for the Vikings now, it's just a continuation of Kwesi and O'Connell saying, okay, what do you need? And I'm guessing, obviously, corners at the top of the list, but I bet you he says we need somebody who can collapse the pocket from the inside. I would bet defensive tackle is going to be a high priority for him this year.
Is that so? If we were to structure this as a want list, is the interior potential defensive tackle who can collapse the pocket more important than corner? Because it feels like if you've got Grenard, Van Ginkel from the outside, if you have a guy who, and I'm talking about a good one here too. I'm talking about if you have a dominant presence inside, who, by the way, that guy has the advantage if he can get the push because he is in the quarterback's lap immediately. He's not coming from the outside. Do you think Flores would prioritize that? I'm not saying the corner is not important. It's very important.
Yeah.
But like if you could pick one to pay a lot to, do you do it to the guy who's going to collapse the pocket and potentially make passing the ball impossible? Or do you side with, no, we've got to get another pretty high-priced cornerback?
Well, that's tough because, as Mike Zimmer says, how many cornerbacks do you need? One more. But, man, I start with the trenches. When you look at the way Philadelphia is built, you look at the way Detroit's built, I start with the trenches. And in Kansas City's, their defensive line, look at that group. I think I would start there. If you can get a wrecking ball in the middle to pair with your edge rushers, that would go a long way to making your corners look really good. And that's not to say you can just put anybody out at corner. They got a lot of work there. But I just think if you can start and build inside, build your way out, that's the way I would take the approach if I was Kwesi. Same thing on the offensive side.
I agree completely there too. Because here's the thing is, and I feel like it's been forgotten a little bit now, is to go back to training camp, and we've talked about this briefly before, but back in training camp, O'Connell wanted to build an identity of being tougher, and they did that early. It
Yeah.
felt like it waned, and it felt like it waned because look, their interior lines, the interior defensive line, I think, was tougher than the offensive line. But in both cases, it was not ideal. And then you're right. Look at Philadelphia. And by the
Yeah.
way, I don't think the Eagles are like this superior team. Like Kansas City's got Mahomes, okay?
Yeah.
So, I punt there. You're not going to beat
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. But in the case of the Eagles, I respect them. I think they're damn good. But that's not you can't beat them. But I don't think that in like a playoff game, I think the Vikings have some pieces. I don't think they have the necessary personnel, to your point, up front, either defensively or offensively, though, to beat a team like that quite yet.
Well, that's it. I mean, you look at, I don't think Jalen Hurts is top 5, quarterback. I don't think we can debate where he's at, but I think the way they're built plays to his strengths, and he's able to run the ball. Obviously, Saquon is, just, I didn't get it, watching him with the Giants. I guess I didn't have enough appreciation for how good he is, but when he takes that first handoff last weekend and takes it to the house, and he's cutting back and he has that burst. I mean, goodness gracious, is he so good? But he's great in itself. But when you add him behind a really good line, and they're just powerful. And you look at their defensive line with Carter and those guys, they win in the trenches, and that's how they beat you up. They're physical. They bully you. We've seen it with the brotherly shove or tush push, whatever you come. I mean, they're getting their, they're going to make that happen. And so, if I'm, I think, I don't know that the Kwesi and the Vikings and O'Connell can fix this all in one off season, but man, I would pour everything I could into the trenches. Obviously, the two guards and center need to be addressed, but I think defensive line, if you can really find that, that mountainous, guy in the middle that can collapse the pocket up the gut and just do what we've seen teams do to Bradbury and their guards, just bull rush them and push, that just creates so much issues. And yes, they got to figure out the secondary with corners, but I think both lines have to be the number one priority this offseason.
I think, Chipper, what the Eagles is they are a lesson in roster construction. Like that's the lesson, right? Because they've got stars, and the Vikings do too. But to your point, like when the first time that I realized Saquon was special was the playoff game here against the Vikings in 22. I think it was by that point, January of 23. And he's special. Like he does things that most guys who play his spot can't. But that being said, if Saquon had stayed with the Giants, he's not on the season that he is because the offensive line is so good. Now he's good enough to use that. It's sort of like this. If you go back to, I mean, he was always going to be special. Adrian Peterson, though, okay? Give him this line.
Yeah.
Is he as good? Because it was Steve Hutchinson who said, here's what you need to do for the whole. It was Hutchinson and Burke and McKinney and that group that opened up whole. So I think, it's so intriguing. Football is definitely built on stars. There's no question. All sports are to a certain degree, but it's also about what is your roster construction, and the Vikings aren't there yet. And I think you are hitting on the two most important things in the next build of the construction.
Yeah, Roscoe, can you look up what Hurts makes?
Sure.
Because we've talked about, the rookie the rookie quarterback being gold, and the rookie contract for a quarterback being gold, and you're allowed to, able to spend that money elsewhere in your roster. Well, Kansas City is different because Mahomes is in a category where he can overcome whatever you put around him, much like Brady was, right? Give him inferior wide receivers, whatever. He can he can compensate for that. But
exactly.
But I think Hurts is he top 7 pay? Top,
I got it right here. He his cap in 2024 was 13.6. It's 21.8 next year. It goes up to 31.
Wow. Okay, so
8 in 26.
I thought he made a lot more than that. I guess I was wrong.
It's an ascending contract.
Yeah. So they've built
52,
around.
It's 52.8 and 26.
So he'll never see
for a
that.
cap.
Yeah.
For a cap.
So they're able to 13 point. You say 6 this year?
Yeah. So it's structured differently. So it's 13.6, 21.8. I'm sorry. I was incorrect on the 52. It's 31.8 in 26, and then in 27 it goes up to 41.8. So it's going to ascend.
So such a small cap number right now, and they're able to spend that money elsewhere. So there you have it. And they've spent that money on their interiors, and then obviously you have Saquon, and I'm guessing AJ Brown has a big cap number too. But yeah, it's what it also is. I mean, there's only Saquon special. But I think this playoffs has shown that even though running back position has been devalued, the Vikings have got to get more out of their running game. When it gets to this time of year, they have, Aaron Jones was a great fit, had really good production, but it's still not enough. I mean, you have to be able to have that component in the playoffs, and I think we're seeing it, unless you got him Mahomes. If you don't, you need to be able to run the ball. And so I think, again, they're going to have to find a running back, but you're also, I think that starts up front. And we talked about it towards the end of last year. They had those stats where goal line or inside the 10, but also 3rd and short, 4th and short. They need to be able to just pound it in there and get that with the running game. And they just don't have that right now.
So let's talk about that because yes, I think the league definitely went away from the run to a certain degree. It's always been important. Like it's never not been important. But yeah, I do think that there was an emphasis more because of the rules on the pass game. Probably that's sort of come back now. But I want to talk to you about the devaluing of the position versus the devaluing of players at the position, which, by the way, I still sort of agree with. Now, Saquon special.
Yeah.
We all agree on that. But
Derrick Henry. Yeah.
Right. But you know what? Like, I'm still not going to, unless I get a special one like that, I'm still not going to pay a ton there because the position is such a tread. It's a tire. Like, you drive it around and it gets more and more worn out. And so, like, I don't think the Vikings need to go and spend huge. I think that they need to get a better one, but more importantly, this comes back to the conversation of, I think equally as important, if not more so, is probably up front. It's probably the guards.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why the position's being devalued, but just because of the injury risk, the wear and tear, those guys only have so many carries in their body, right?
Correct.
Now, when you get someone special like a Saquon, a Derrick Henry, that's going to cost you. And I think it's worth the cost. Obviously, look at Philadelphia. It's worth, but there are not 15 of those guys. So everybody else is in that camp of, okay, let's find someone who's good enough, but we still need to be able to run the ball. And it starts up front where, or it gives in Detroit. I mean, he's special. You're going to pay him, right, to keep him.
Right.
When his contract comes up. But no, I think it's a great, just lack of a better word, ass kicking offensive line can make a lot of running backs look good. And that's where, but that's going to be pricey, Judd. I don't, I think you're going to have to spend big in free agency to get a guard.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
And maybe a center, and then you're going to have to be smart about drafting another some combination, but that's going to be I'd be willing to bet the most money and most resources get spent in those 3 areas, those 3 positions.
I think they're going to draft a back. The running back
Yeah.
draft is plentiful, which is
Sure.
great, which is
Yeah.
fine. I think we have to be realistic. Interior line. I think they're going to spend on a guard. I think, and there is a bountiful free agency group of guards. Center, I'm not so sure. And then the question becomes: Are you going to sign a right guard and have Brandel? But like I would love to see the home refurbished completely. I don't think
Yeah.
it's going to be. I do think that they'll spend on one, and then I guess my other question is would they try and spend on a guard and an interior defensive lineman, which is, by the way, a small group. Like those guys are going to be pricey. But I don't think there's any way that we see like the entire interior of the offensive line replaced.
Yeah, I mean, for one, how often do you see that? You come back with 3 new starters on,
especially if it's expensive, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't typically happen. I mean, yeah, in our monopoly world, sure, it sounds good, right? I mean, why not? That you need it, but reality is probably suggest you're gonna have to do something different. Yeah, if you went and you made a big splash on a guard, tried to make I don't know how many big splashes you can have, but at defensive tackle, nose guard, someone in the interior, and then find I keep using this analogy, but find a Blake Cashman-esque guard or center or another, defensive lineman, a guy who doesn't necessarily break the bank and is not a sexy, splashy hire or signing, but you figure out is going to fit great with your scheme and what you're doing, and comes in here and performs I thought Cashman had a Pro Bowl type season. I thought he was that good in that impact.
Oh, he's marvelous. Yeah, he's great.
But he wasn't one that had huge headlines when they did it, around the league. I think people said, that's a pretty good signing or a smart signing, but it was a great signing for him. So they need to have another one like that. But here's the other thing is like, Judd, to pivot back to the secondary, I think they have to sign Murphy. And what's the cost of that?
I agree with you on this. And it's going to be very pricey, but he was damn good. And to your point about Flores being back for a third year, and now like year 2 of a really cohesive defense. A year ago in 2023, Murphy was okay. He was, not terrible, not great. This year, he the light went on and he was great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you. If it comes down to if there's one guy that I would consider on the entire Vikings free agent list to be a priority guy, 100%, in my opinion, it's him.
Yeah, just because it's not like you got guys waiting in the wings, right? I mean, this is
and he played really well. He was good.
Yeah, if Mekhi Blackman is what they think he is, and they were high, had high hope for him, but you don't know coming back from injury, kind of what level is he going to get back right away? But you count on that. The other, Shaq Griffin's not going to be back.
Gilmore's probably going to retire.
I'm guessing Gilmore's probably
done
going to retire or be done. So you start looking around, it's like, yeah, you've got to, you have to re-sign him, I think. So it's always a puzzle, but this is to me, I don't think this is a complicated puzzle in terms of where it has to be allocated. It's just what's going to be the cost. And it's good that they have that Kwesi did made the moves to free up that salary cap last year, and they're in a pretty good spot going into as we say, the silly season.
Which is a great time of year, which also, so I saw that there's a report again today. I think it's from our old pal, Tom Pelissero, about Darnold. And it seems like the national folks, including Tom, are leaning towards there's a very good chance he comes back. And to backtrack to what you're saying, this is where I become very curious about, okay, if he comes back, what's that price tag? And is that going to eat up the potential to sign, I don't know, let's say a guard, an interior defensive lineman? Like, this is where I become really intrigued, because if you feel that McCarthy is set to play, I think you got to go that route. And I know there's some questions, but let's call it spade a spade. After those last 2 games, there are questions about Sam as well. Like, he played well, but come on, those last 2 games have to leave
that's it. It's like, I would say if you bring him back, like, what is the philosophy? Because you're not, I'm guessing that the contract's going to be prohibitive from doing other things.
That's what I'm saying.
And so you're like, okay, what's the objective here? You have these areas you really have to fix and upgrade, but you're not going to be able to do it to get one more year out of Sam Darnold. You watch the Final Four teams, and yes, you can have a great regular season, but you just see that, man, they have to improve this roster in a significant way. Mm-hmm. And I just don't know that you would be able to do that with a high price quarterback.
And I don't know that you need that. Like again, those last 2 games had to leave a scar. You cannot watch those last 2 games and say, yeah, but his first 16 were fine. It's like, okay, that's great, but when it mattered most, like the one thing that I sensed from O'Connell post game after the Rams lost Chipper and in his end of season press conference that I didn't sense as much in 22 because that was such a pop up surprise year one was this. O'Connell, to me, including the way that he answered Mark Craig's question about the interior offensive line, seemed acutely aware. I don't think the Vikings are going to win a playoff game against a good team, and the playoffs are ordinarily have a bunch of good teams. I don't think they're going to win a playoff game against a good team until that is shored up. And O'Connell, to his credit, statistically, the Vikings ran the ball way more this year than they did in 2023. But all of that being said, like, you literally the last 2 games watched your ass get kicked. It felt like O'Connell watched that and said, okay, this was a fun year, but like the deficiencies are obvious now. And so those have to be filled. And with Darnold, if he comes back, are you filling them? Not as much as you potentially could.
And that's it. I mean, how could you watch that Rams game and say, you know what, we can ride with we can go another year without fixing the interior line. It's like, you could beat some bad teams and a lot of bad teams, but when you're getting in the playoffs and you're facing really good fronts on both sides of the ball, it's like you have to be able to match that. And they weren't able to do that with Detroit. They weren't able to do it with the Rams. And so, I would be curious to know if that is indeed, a realistic thing of Darnold return. Like, what's that contract going to look like? I wouldn't be in favor. I don't think it'd be smart to pay a lot of money there that you could be allocating elsewhere.
I think you bring back Murphy, who's going to be expensive. I think you at least explore bringing back Bynum. Now he might price himself out too. And if he does, I'm done. This is why I think Harrison Smith coming back helps because one, I think Theo Jackson can play. 2, I want to leave Metellus in his role. I do not want to make him a traditional safety. And on Smith, I am a big proponent of ordinarily just retire. Like, don't embarrass yourself, right? But that position in particular is a really unique one. It might be the most unique position in sports for aging players because there's no question he is not the athletically gifted guy that he was 5 years ago, but he's so damn smart. And safety it lends itself to potential geriatric play. It does.
Well, you're not having to run and cover wide receivers.
And he's so smart.
40 times a game. Place. Yeah. And he just directs everything. I'm curious to see what they do with Aaron Jones. I think you have to get younger and cheaper there.
That's got to be on my terms. Yeah. I'm back for a year on my terms.
On my terms. Yeah. And he may have options elsewhere. I don't know, but and he's a great locker room guy, just, consummate professional. But I think younger and cheaper, if you can get him for your terms, sure. But that'll be one to watch. But I think if you put their free agents up there at the top, I mean, to me, Murphy is just for all those reasons, as we said. So, yeah.
Roscoe, Sam Darnold question. What's up?
On Sam, you guys are talking about him and that seems to be trending towards, at least some members of the media believe that it might be leaning towards he's back with the Minnesota Vikings. So I guess I have kind of a 2-parter. The first part is, let's say the Vikings do that. Unless it's a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal where basically all the money is front loaded into the first year and they can get out from it after the 2025-2026 season. Explain to me how that would be any better for the Minnesota Vikings than what they were facing basically the entire Kirk Cousins time that he was here, where you're getting pretty good quarterback play, but not elite quarterback play that's probably going to take you to where you ultimately want to be, which is a Super Bowl. So I don't buy that unless I know Chip has said, well, I want to see the terms on that. I can't imagine it would be any more than 2 years because it just puts them in the same spot they were just in. And then the follow-up on that, is it possible that this is just being leaked to drive up the price of if we franchise him, can we maybe get that second or third round pick for him that perhaps we covet more than a fourth or a fifth round pick or letting him walk?
Yeah, I mean, it could be on that one. That's why I call it the silly season, because you hear so many rumors and things. It's hard to know like what's true. And I mean, I trust Pelisseiro's reporting. He's phenomenal at it. But it's hard to know fact from fiction when you get in the offseason. But yeah, I agree. I mean, the term I keep going back to, they had a plan in place last year. 1-year bridge, get the McCarthy. Like, why would you deviate from that plan now unless Darnold had this amazing, if he had continued what he did in the regular season into those final 2 games and they made a long postseason run, okay, then we could have that conversation. But the way it ended, those last 2 games, to me, I think it's like, okay, as Judd said, great season, fun season, last 2 games, we saw what we needed to see. It wasn't good enough. We're going to stick with the plan that we set in motion last year. And if assuming JJ's, on the timeline that they say he is and believe he is, I just don't know why you'd want to deviate from that.
The only reason why would be, I think, one is if you really fear that McCarthy is not going to be prepared to play at some point. And 2, if you got a long look at Daniel Jones and said he stinks. Because besides that, I don't think that there is. Like, if you bring Sam back again, too, keep in mind, you are eating up year 2 of a rookie contract. Yeah. Now it's down to a 2-year contract with an option, which is cheaper than than the majority of QBs, but it's more expensive. So I think that's problem one. On the reporting aspect, I talked about this with Phil and Dex as well on PD today, Chipper. I think this is a part and parcel of, the Schefters, Rappaport, Pelissero. They are given information that is credible from their sources. And their sources are going to tell them what their sources want them to say. It's not their job. Like the difference between like a columnist or a pontificators like us, the difference is it's not their job to suss through it and then say, here's what I'm being told, but I think it's BS. Yeah. So like if you're being told, hey, if Kwesi tells you off the record, I think Sam's coming back, you don't go on and say, well, my source says he's coming back, but ain't no way in hell. So like those guys are credible and those guys have phenomenal sources, but their job is not to step outside that lane and then say, well, I was told this, but I don't believe it. Like that's how you lose your sources. So it is definitely a dance. And look, it behooves CAA, which represents Darnold, and the Vikings, for everyone to believe right now the Vikings want him back, because best case, you franchise him, it's a $40 million contract, you then trade him, and the starting point of the negotiations, Chipper, then for a multi-year contract is $40 million and not $30 million.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, rule number 1 in the offseason, why close any door when you don't have to, right? Like, you keep every option out there, whether it's
and they should.
Absolutely. I mean, it's in their best interest to say everything's on the table. And so now, whether it comes to fruition, we'll see. But it does them no good to say at any point, we're turning the page until they until that decision has to be made. So I don't know. It's going to be fun speculation. I'm curious to see what the buzz and all the rumors and reports that we get related to Darnold is, because I have to be honest with you, I have no idea what his market will look like. Those 2 games, as you said, Judd, cast such a negative blanket over everything that happened leading up to that. I honestly, I don't have a good feel for what teams how they'll evaluate the whole thing in totality.
It's the most important. It's the most important time. It's the two most important games of the season, and he completely choked. And like you can't I'm sorry, but I can't look at a Bears game and say, well, yeah, but back in the Bears game, he was fantastic. Yeah. I mean, that's not how this works. Yeah. And O'Connell and Kwesi at their press conferences weren't going to go there, but that had to leave an indelible mark. And now, but in their defense too, they now want his market to go back up. It's interesting.
Back up, yeah.
There's a bunch of teams that need QBs, but if you look at sort of how Darnold fits within the spectrum, not all the teams would have like the Jets aren't going to try to sign Sam. I don't even think the Giants should.
It's fascinating because it's a bad quarterback draft class, or not as deep as we've seen.
It's only like 2 or 3 tops.
And Darnold is Darnold the best free agent quarterback?
The interesting thing is I think Cousins is going to be released. I think he's going to be out there. There's questions about Rodgers, if he's going to try to continue to play. My guess is he will because he's such a narcissist.
Does somebody look at Daniel Jones? I don't know. I don't think he's the market for him, right?
I think Kirk Cousins. So I think among the veterans, the wild cards are Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson probably.
Yeah.
And if Russell Wilson leaves Pittsburgh, I think that there is a fighting chance that at the end of the day, the two teams that probably make the most sense for Sam are the Raiders and the Steelers. And the question is, can you get them to bid off each other for a franchise tag player to trade him? And that's the one I'm with you. I don't know.
Well, that's a delicate dance. And this is where Kwesi and his staff need to, they nailed it last offseason. And if you go down that route, whether you're going to sign him and trade him, or do the franchise tag and trade him, and you got to be right. I don't know. So it's going to be, it'll be fascinating to see how this thing plays out, this spring.
Last thing, Chipper, officiating. So we saw it again. Where do you stand here? Royce's theory is this: the NFL likes this. Like they like it because it's talked about the next day, and everyone's like, the Chiefs. Therefore, the Bills got screwed. The Chiefs. Where do you stand with this? Because I will say, on the spot of the ball, I refuse. I know I've been told it's difficult. I refuse to believe you can't come up with a better system than a couple of guys my age who can't see
80 years old running out.
Trying to run in from the side. And by the way, the mass, I don't care if you're 25, the mass of humanity that you're trying to see through. So like where do you stand again? Because we're always talking about it this time of year.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when we were on the beat, it first came up, it was like, they should make them full-time officials, right? This is their job.
Yes.
They're not lawyers or judges or whatever. They should be full-time officials. I don't know that would be the answer because what are you going to do during the week? It's not like you're out there practicing covering games. I mean, they all know the rule book. It's subjective and it's happening really fast. So it's not like you're practicing every day. The technology thing, I don't understand why we still use chain gangs. Every other sport has figured out a way to do, you look at tennis, there's got to be some scientists out there that can figure out how to put a microchip in a ball or something, something.
Something closer, at least.
We're not bringing out the chains and measuring it,
Well, and two old guys are running out,
I know.
It's ridiculous.
I know. So, but I agree with what people say that, and if you've been field level, you see it is amazing how fast things happen. And to ask people to make, bang, bang, pass interference, these things, I just think it's, I don't know what the answer is to make. Now there's certain things I think you can help them out. Okay. Face mask, that should be reviewable by the booth, right? If they miss it and the guy's head's turning sideways, signal down and say, hey, you missed one. That should be
and they can
this year. And they can.
That
should be so, but Royce might be onto something because
they never change it.
The NFL, it might be the old any publicity's is good publicity, that the fact that you're talking about and screaming about, because here's the thing. Does it cause us to turn away and revolt and go watch something else? No. So we can just bitch about it for the next week. And so it's not like you're driving customers away because they think, I'll never watch this again because the officiating's bad.
I will say, and I've said this for a long time, there are too many rules. Like to ask these guys to watch out for, they're always, because it happens in March when the owners meet, right? And then the coaches meet too. And they sit in a room with their cocktails with instant, they scroll back or they go back and then they go forward. And then like, we should change this rule. Look, in a conference room, it's an awesome idea. But the other thing is, I just think we're also to a point where I don't understand the replay thing, because you clearly have replay assist, right? And
but for certain things, only for certain things.
Right. But I mean, instead of this whole, I throw my hanky and challenge it, you could have replay assist. And by the way, you cannot tell me that this, just to be clear, did not cost the Vikings, but in the Rams-Vikings playoff game, when they did not throw a flag on a face mask, and then they called it, and Aikman's like, I don't think they can do that. Yeah. And then they said, well, we talked about it. No, you didn't. They buzzed down and said it was a face mask or that.
And I think they were looking up at the
which by the way, I am fine with.
Yeah.
But it does seem odd, and the fact that we are trying to spot a football or at the goal line, right? Like, I think he crossed. I'm not sure he crossed. It just seems so backwards to me.
When there's 15 bodies piled up. Yeah, and you talk about the too many rules. I've long thought that about the catch. Sometimes like I don't even know what the catch is, and I go back
more
to
clear now.
It is more clear now, but
than 5 years ago.
How 5 years ago it'd be so fuzzy. And I go back to what Childress used to tell us. It was like, have the 3 drunks at the bar. Ask 3 drunks at a bar, was that a catch or not catch? There's your answer. That's how it should be, right? So, but it is. I mean, what they're asked to look for, legislate, it's just so complicated. So, but I'm guessing because of the missed calls with the face masks that'll get changed this spring at the owners' meetings. And every year there's something new, but I'm guessing that one's going to be a replay assisted, because if you miss it, I don't know how they miss it when a guy's head gets.
But the referee's sideways. Behind, like what makes no sense is, and in my opinion, do you know what a tricky small change that I think hurts was? And they did this for safety. When the umpire was moved from behind the linebacker, because you could see a lot then, right? But then, of course, again, old people were being wiped out. And so like, we can't have our old guys being wiped out. But I think that was a sneaky problem because it created a blind spot then. And you got the official who's in charge, or the referee's in charge of the quarterback, literally standing behind the quarterback.
The two that drove me crazy this year were the tackles that would have a foot in the backfield, trying to get a head start on these edge rushers that are 10 yards wide coming in like a Lamborghini.
Yep.
And the offensive lineman downfield. That one drives me crazy.
They call it sporadically too.
I know.
There was one in that Bills Chiefs game. I forget which team. I think it was the Chiefs.
They're in the end zone.
Yeah, the guy's in the end zone. He's like 4 yards of. It's like, you can't be 4 yards ahead. And by the way, if you are, they should call it. And I don't know, that whole thing too is so, because it's like 1.5 yards. It's not much. It's supposed to be very small. That drives me nuts as well.
Yeah.
But who knows? All right, guys, we are done. Roscoe, thanks much. Chip, talk to you next week. Purple Access is the show. Appreciate you watching.